It was a Halloween night like any other. But in this small town, Halloween wasn't something to celebrate. Local lore warned of the Headless Riders, 3 cursed figures, damned to ride by the light of the moon, seeking a way to end their eternal suffering. David, a skeptic at heart, decided to challenge the legend. To prove to everyone that the tale was mere superstition, he and a group of friends swore to spend the night in the abandoned fields where, they'd heard, the Headless Riders appeared each year. They thought nothing would happen, but stepping into that forbidden ground, they unknowingly crossed the veil between the living and the damned. They reached the field around 11:30, their flashlights casting faint, trembling beams. The night was unusually quiet, and then a sound crept in from the darkness. A faint rustling, like someone moving through the tall grass, unseen but watching. David felt a shiver of unease but shook it off. "Come on, don't let a few creepy sounds get to us," he said dismissively. But they all knew it wasn't just the wind. It was something else, something waiting to awaken. Suddenly, the distant sound of galloping hooves filled the air, growing louder by the second, as if an invisible army was approaching. The noise was impossible to trace. It seemed to come from everywhere at once, surrounding them. You guys heard that?" asked Matt, his voice shaking. Nobody replied, frozen between fear and disbelief. David, however, couldn't help himself. "Hey, let's see who's out there," he called into the emptiness. The moment his voice echoed back, the galloping stopped. Silence engulfed them once more, a silence heavy with expectation. Then, from within the fog, came a piercing whinny, loud and terrible, freezing them in place. The first rule whispered ominously in David's mind, "Never call for them, never invite them, or they will come." The group continued in silence, but something was changing. A thick, rancid fog, heavy with the stench of sulfur, enveloped them, as if something ancient and decayed had drawn close. A faint glow appeared within the trees, and a shadowed figure materialized on a massive black horse. A headless rider, emerging from the dark. Where his head should have been, there was only a chilling emptiness, an endless, dark void. David couldn't resist looking at the figure despite the second rule echoing in his mind. He stared, transfixed, and saw the impossible. That void, where a head should be seemed alive, a pulsing abyss that drew him in like a heartbeat from beyond the grave. David's eyes locked onto the void, and he felt an overwhelming wave of dread paralyzing his body. His hands shook uncontrollably, and his thoughts grew murky, as though he were being pulled into a realm of the dead. The Headless Rider stared into his soul. He knew it, even though the rider had no eyes. It was as if that void was devouring every fragment of his courage. He tried to look away, but his gaze was trapped, locked onto that endless darkness. His heartbeat quickened as the figure began to move closer, each hoofbeat echoing like the drums of judgment. The friends tried to run, only to find that there was no escape. The fog seemed to solidify, the trees forming a barrier around them. And that's when they realized they weren't alone. 3 riders now surrounded them, looming figures of shadow and decay, undead shapes woven from nightmares. One of the riders approached David, extending a skeletal hand holding an ancient, rune-covered helmet, its surface reeking of death, burning his senses. "Take it," a voice rasped, dry and ancient, invading his mind. "Wear the helmet, and your fate will be sealed." David knew what this meant. The legend claimed that anyone who accepted the helmet or looked into the void of the riders' faces would lose their soul, condemned to ride with them, headless, searching for another to replace them. David tried to pull away, but the rider followed, and the voice pressed on, more insistent now. "Accept your fate, mortal. Join the eternal night." His friends clung to him, screaming at him to resist, But David seemed entranced, his hands trembling as he fought the urge to touch the cursed helmet. Then, in a desperate surge of will, he shouted, "I reject you!" The moment he spoke, a blinding light exploded from within the field, and the riders let out a bone-chilling wail before vanishing into the fog. The group broke free, running as if death itself chased them. But even after escaping, David's gaze remained haunted, as if something had stayed with him. Next time Halloween night falls, remember this story. Don't call for what you don't know, and never look into the darkness where eyes should be. If you enjoyed this chilling tale and crave more terrifying legends, like this video, subscribe and hit the bell to never miss a scare. And don't forget, there's another spine-tingling story waiting on your screen. See you in the next one. Unless the Headless Riders come for you first.